Hello and welcome to the program. Angela Merkel is still the most popular politician in Germany 14 years after she became Chancellor, according to a new poll. German Chancellor has always said she wants to serve out her fourth term, yet health concerns have raised question of whether she can continue to lead Europe's largest economy until 2021. Now, what happens if the European Union longest serving head of government chooses to step down early? And what could the departure of Angela Merkel mean for Ukraine in this case? To discuss this issue, we're joined in the studio today by Andreas Umland. He's a political scientist and historian. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, first question, there's no secret that many Ukrainian political observers are now concerned about the possible departure from the politics of Angela Merkel, who in recent years has been actively developing relations between Berlin and Kiev. Now, there is also a threat that uninformed and less naive with respect to Putin party members in Germany could come to power. How would you evaluate such possible scenario and such possible outcome?
Well, Angela Merkel will leave in 2021 and the latest. That is when the next regular parliamentary elections are due, and she has already announced that she will not stand again. There was some speculation about whether she may take up another position on the European level, in the EU, or perhaps even on the UN level or in another international organization. But it looks now as if she will actually fully leave politics. She is also seemingly somewhat ill, as we know. And it could even happen that either out of political reasons or out of health reasons, she would step down, or the current government would disappear or break up before the 2021 regular elections, and then we would have snap elections, and then we would already have a new chancellor earlier than 2021, because she would probably then also not stand again in such snap elections. And snap elections are not that common in Germany, but they happen sometimes. Like in 2005, when Angela Merkel became Chancellor, that was a snap election.
Now, would you say it's realistic to say that some let's say pro-Russian forces, not necessarily forces, but pro-Russian actors in Germany's assembly or could raise to power?
Well, we have now a quite explicitly pro-Putinist party, the so-called Alternative for Germany, Alternative für Deutschland, which is resembling in its attitude towards Russia and Putin very much the other well-known far-right parties like the Lega in Italy or the successor organization of the Front National in France under Marine Le Pen, and some other similar organizations. But in Germany, fortunately, it seems that the upper ceiling of electoral support for the Alternative for Germany is significantly below 20%. And this is a stigmatized party in Germany, an isolated party, at least on the federal level. And it looks to me unlikely that this party will, in the near future, or maybe will ever join a federal level government. There are now speculations that there might be coalitions in East Germany on the state level, on the district level, between the center-right and the Alternative for Germany. But even that looks not so likely. But anyway, on the federal level, fortunately, we will not have a situation as we have now, for instance, in Italy, or as we had in Austria or in other countries where these sort of pro-Putinist right-wing populist parties enter coalition governments. Therefore, actually, Germany is here perhaps in some ways a positive exception.
Now, you talked about the idea of a possible successor of Angela Merkel. Are you, or do you know if there are any talks already between President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky and potential successors, or people around Mrs. Merkel, so to ensure some sort of continuity after the basically the relations that he already has with
Well,
Mrs.
I mean,
Merkel?
so far there are no immediate signs that she will step down or that the current government will step down before 2021. So there's no immediate occasion for this to happen. I know that there has been already, for instance, a meeting between the head of the one of the heads of the Green Party, which is now rising in Germany, and which in some sort of constellation could even be appointing the new Chancellor of Germany. That could happen. It's not very likely, but it has become possible because of the rising electoral support for the Green Party. But as far as I know, there have been no sort of such meetings. It's also not yet unclear who will actually succeed Angela Merkel if, again, the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union, will be the main governmental party. So there are several candidates, but who exactly will that then be, who will be elected a chancellor, is unclear. In Germany, this can also change very rapidly, and we have a parliamentary system, and this is all done within the parliament. So we could have in 2 years somebody who is not yet known today as a sort of important federal level politician.
That's interesting that you talked about the Greens. As you said, that's one of the most important but positive political trend for Kiev has been the strengthening and the rise of this Green Party. Now they are critical, especially critical to Putin's imperialism, authoritarianism, and traditionalism. How effective can be their support towards Ukraine in this time of changing, in this time of crisis, let's say?
Well, so far they have a small faction in parliament. They did not do very well in the last elections, but in the last polls for the last half year now, they have been they got over 20%, and they have now for I think 2 months or maybe even more stable over 20%, 23%, 24% in the polls. There was even a short period when they were in the polls ahead of the Christian Democratic Union, the center-right party. Now they are in the polls again, somewhat below the Christian Democratic Union. So they will not be just a strong party probably in the next parliament, but it also looks now almost unavoidable that they will be part of the next German government. Simply arithmetically, it will not be possible to form a government without them, or it will be also ideologically not be possible. At least as long as the Social Democrats are as weak as they currently are, it doesn't look very likely that there can be a new government without the Greens. So they will probably be, not for 100%, but most probably be in the next government. And then it would be important which ministries they get, whether they in what kind of coalition they would be with the left-wing parties or with the center-right, whether they would be appointing the chancellor or not. So they will play a certain role, I think, in the next government, and that will be a new situation. Also, they were already once in government, but then Ukraine was geopolitically not as important as it is today. But my feeling is, and I know the Green Party leadership a little bit, is that this would be then a policy that would be friendly actually towards Ukraine. There's a lot of sympathy in the Green Party for Ukraine, especially after the Euromaidan. And I would hope that this will then also translate into maybe new approaches in Germany's Eastern policies.
Now, would, if possibly, the Greens have that kind of important, let's say, influence in the next government or in the next parliament of Germany? Would they be able to let's say stop or block or at least have more influence to slow down the Nord Stream 2 project, because there are in Gazprom, and there's no secret that, for example, Mr. Schröder or like some characters like that are on Russia's payroll. Let's say on that point. Is it possible to counter such influence and such projects, or is it too late?
Yeah, I understand the question. I think also if Germany would take today the decision on building Nord Stream 2 or not, my guess would be that today Germany would not agree on such a project. The problem now with the project that half of it has been built, that a lot of money has been put into it, and the decisions have been made. Most of the permissions have been acquired by the Nord Stream consortium, and now Germany is sort of bound into this project. And I'm afraid that the only hope still for stopping the completion of building this pipeline are the United States and their possible sanctions against them. I'm not yet sure whether there will be new sanctions and what the effect of the sanctions will be. Maybe they will not actually stop the project. So I'm afraid till 2021, when the next regular elections are due, the project will be either finished already or dead anyway, because of, for instance, US sanctions. So for the Greens, maybe this issue will not actually be, the building of the pipeline will not be on the table. That would be more than the issue of, in general, how to reformulate policies towards Russia and Ukraine. And here I would expect a rather more friendly approach towards Ukraine and a more hawkish approach towards Russia.
You talked about the US. I guess we can focus a little bit on the US. How do you see just generally this kind of a chess game between Ukraine, the US and Germany? How do you forecast because soon Mr. Zelensky is going to meet Mr. Trump. What might happen afterwards? How do you perceive that?
Well, I don't want to comment on Mr. Trump. He is in a way an enigmatic figure, but I published an article recently here in Ukraine in Европейska Pravda, European Pravda, about the prospects of German-Ukrainian relations, exactly because I think that the US may be in the long term a less reliable partner for Ukraine than it may now look. Currently, the US is very much focused on Eastern Europe because Russia has intervened in American domestic affairs. And in a way, Ukraine is benefiting from this Russian policy towards the US, which has now made many people in Washington angry about Russia. And Ukraine is then simply one of the elements in this new American anti-Putinist, I would call it, approach. And Ukraine is benefiting from that. But my fear is that in the long term, the main concern for Washington, especially if we have some change of policy in Moscow, when maybe Moscow will be less engaged in these interventions in US policies, the main concern for Washington will become China. And then Washington may want to create some sort of alliance, sort of anti-Chinese alliance, not a military alliance, but some sort of condominium or union or whatever. And then it could happen that actually Russia will be regarded as a part of this axis.
Which would be a bit counterintuitive.
You know, the mood is now very much, as far as I see, with many analysts, that the real topic for the 21st century is going to be this confrontation between the West and China. And then the question is going to be on which side Russia is going to be. And I could imagine a situation one day. This is currently, it looks very sort of unlikely with Putin in power and this sort of strange approach that Russia has taken towards the US. Naive also, I would say, approach that they think, you know, we can intervene there in the domestic affairs and that we will somehow get away with it. This will change at some point, and then indeed there could be a situation where the topic of China will be so important that the US is trying to recruit the European countries and Russia into this sort of alliance, and then the Ukrainian topic may become secondary for Washington, and then the interest may go down. This is something that is now already discussed in Washington by certain people, and so far, so to say, the Kremlin is doing everything to make the Washington angry, and that's good for Ukraine. But at some point, this may end, and then maybe a country like Germany will actually become more important for Ukraine. So
basically, Ukraine would be kind of crushed between this kind of alliance potentially, if that happens, between Washington and
simply it would
Moscow.
Become then less important. Yeah, because now Washington is very sort of enraged about the Russian behavior. And once this goes down, then Russia will be seen in a different light. It will have a different weight as well for the US, and then this will be in a way negative, perhaps for Ukraine. These are, so far, this looks almost fantastic to say things like that. But in the long run, both developments in Germany and developments in the US could actually lead to a sort of change of role, that maybe Germany will become more important for Ukraine, whereas the US may actually become less of a partner.
Now, and to conclude this interview on a broader topic and in the same time on a more focused topic, what about EU and NATO membership in that context? Do you think it's realistic that Ukraine might have EU membership or / NATO membership soon, or the deadline is just being pushed away and pushed away? Well,
the reason that I'm sort of drawing here attention in the press and here with you on these bilateral relationships is that, to me, it looks, unfortunately, like Ukraine will not get into some sort of membership track in the next years, neither with the EU nor with NATO, for different reasons. The EU is now in a process where it has to sort of redefine itself. It has the Western Balkan countries that have an official membership perspective. It has this very complicated relationship with Turkey. Brexit may be coming or is coming, and there may now actually be on the agenda an internal reform of the EU, perhaps with the conclusion of a new treaty. Periodically the sort of basic treaty, you could say the constitution of the EU, is updated, and there are now lots of discussions in the EU how to reconstitute the EU in these new circumstances. And also, if there's a new chancellor, then in Germany there will be perhaps a new discussion about this. And this will unfortunately mean for Ukraine that the amount of attention and energy that the EU will have for Ukraine is going to be limited. The EU is going to be a partner, an important partner for Ukraine, certainly. But I'm afraid even the membership perspective is not the perspective is not on the agenda, and even less so negotiations for a membership. With NATO, it's maybe even more unpredictable. Here, the stark and sad example is that of Georgia. Georgia has already, for more than 10 years, basically, an internal situation that actually makes it ready for NATO membership. The public support for NATO membership is large. The army is largely reformed. So it should have been already. It should have become a NATO member already several years ago. And Georgia has also a territorial conflict with Russia, but it is not in war with Russia. And the Georgian-Russian relationship is tense, but not as tense as the Ukrainian-Russian relationship. But even Georgia cannot get in. So I'm therefore also I was a little bit surprised in the last months when Petro Poroshenko had this campaign where he was promising Ukrainians EU and NATO membership. Although he was sort of, I'm not sure how he could say this, because he has no power over this, and both organizations are actually now in a kind of situation which makes this membership perspective rather far away. I think Ukraine will eventually become a member of both organizations, but frankly, I don't see that happening in the next years.
Well, thank you for this overview about the whole situation. It was a pleasure to have you in the studio today. That was Andreas Umland, political scientist and historian. Thank you for watching Head to Head, and stay tuned for the rest.